Lovely. Okay, gentlemen, thank you for coming here. Now, for the three of you, is it the first? No, you're not the first time. Your first time in Estonia?
No, I was a speaker at the MIT conference. I think it was 2013.
Okay, all right, some time ago. And John, you're here very often, aren't you?
Only this year. This is my 4th trip this year.
Sure, cool. And Ravi?
I've been here, I think, 3 times to Estonia. First time in Tartu.
Okay, lovely.
Yes.
Good. So yeah, there were some common themes coming out through the discussion here, and I was very interested in, it came first, sell first, like make sure you've got the sales, because that I think is culturally one of the things that's very difficult for Estonians, to push themselves forward, to stand out and say, look, we're proud and loud. I don't know, do you have any feedback? It's easy for us because maybe we're Westerners, we're all loud, we're outgoing, but do you have some feedback or some thoughts? If someone's coming from a culture or a place they're a bit shy, we don't have that big personality. Do you have some thoughts?
Yeah, so I think it follows on from what Ravi was saying. When you sell, don't go into a sales meeting as a salesman. Go in as, I'm just going to demonstrate how much value it is that what I'm presenting to you can have that impact on your life, on your business, on your day-to-day, whatever that thing is that's going to make them value what you have to offer. Just position it well, and then you actually, if your product or your service is good and you just focus on demonstrating value, the sale will just naturally happen. So then you're not being forceful on the person, you're not trying to close them. They're actually wanting to give you the business. And that's where you really want to be as a salesperson, is get them to a point where they understand coherently the value that you're providing. And you don't actually have to ask for the business in the end of it. They just want to give it to you, providing you ask the right questions and demonstrate the right value.
Which now follows on to something, Ravi, from your one. You spoke about a similar thing, about just showing it and growing with the customer. With enterprises, though, from my experience, it was very common that you had a champion inside of the enterprise. That one person who's maybe your main contact, and they're the one sort of, because then they are sort of going and internally selling that, and you kind of have to give them enough ammo. What's some of your experiences around that, dealing with a champion inside of an organization and giving them what they need to on-sell to everybody else in the enterprise?
Yeah, a couple of things. The first thing is, if you have identified, and this is what Jamie was saying, if you've identified a must-have need for that organization, the sale will take care of itself. It will just naturally fall out if you find the right pain point. And on finding the champion internally, Chris Duggan, he doesn't call it, who's the R sales chair for Alchemist, he doesn't call it sales, because I think that word, there's so many connotations in people's mind about sales and slickness and having to say things that aren't necessarily true. He calls it commitment engineering. So it's just like any other thing that you're engineering, just like you're engineering a product, you're just engineering commitment one stage at a time. You're gonna have a first date, then a second date, and you're gonna just keep going. But at each stage, you're investing and they have to invest as well in you, just like any other relationship. For that champion, the complicated thing about enterprise sales is that the person who pays is different than the person who's the user. So you have two different constituents, and you have to drive commitment with both of them. And you need to, and both of them will want to work for you. If it's a true relationship, they'll want to make you succeed if you want to make them succeed. We can talk a lot about that, but that's
right. Is there a slower pace of change? Could you say that dealing with enterprise customers is a bit slower because you've got to deal with a mighty machine and get in the middle of that?
Yeah, that's the classic trade-off. Is that enterprises have longer sales cycles versus if you just do direct to consumer, you can close things quickly.
Sure.
But there are higher payouts too.
Right.
Yeah.
I was very interested, John. You spoke a lot about metrics, and that these were the key that we had to focus in. And I know myself, I have no idea about a lot of those metrics in my business. None. Is that something you see very often? A startup founder comes in, there's something going on, but they don't kind of have control over the numbers. And what tools or processes do you give them to help them get that under control?
Well, just like it's so much easier to do things with technology today, there's a whole collection of tools out there. If you're using Google Analytics or a bunch of other things that are just, in a couple of hours worth of work, you can start to see that, right? So I do my whatever I'm doing on Twitter, and then was it worthwhile or not? Well, if people came to my website and then nobody buys, that's different than nobody came to my website.
Right.
And so I don't know what I'm supposed to do. A lot of times people are paying no attention whatsoever to what's happening. They're just doing random things. And then when you do random things, you get random results.
Right.
And so as a business person, you want to manage your resources to be focused on doing the most important thing next, which is wherever the problem is. And so if your problem is getting people to come to your business, or if your problem is understanding what your customer really wants, that's very different than the problem is my customers don't tell their friends.
Sure.
And so if you put metrics in place to measure those things, and there's many tools to do that, then you can focus on the important things and grow quickly with less waste.
Because that would be part of the value that you're providing and the consultancy, the wisdom that you're teaching as such is that what are all those metrics? What are those pain points? And you've got experience on how to measure them specifically.
Yes, but more importantly, with things like Startup Weekend, we can run people through that experience in a weekend and get from idea to revenue in the weekend and have people understand those pain points directly. And so lots of opportunities for people to, in a weekend, build something that has simplistic metrics that allows them to drive this question.
And from that, do you have some examples of companies that work off complex metrics and some that work off maybe more simplistic measures of what they have?
Well, I think that when you have organizations that are complex organizations where you're selling into enterprise,
Okay.
you're going to have a much deeper set of metrics than if I'm just selling to people that have a cell phone and it's an immediate sale.
But is that deeper? Because I mean, we talked about the enterprise. It's like one person and they've got to on-sell. This is different.
Well, usually there's many people in an enterprise who can say no.
Yeah. Okay.
And so you have to touch all of those people and get them at least to sit down.
Sure.
And so, I think enterprise sales often are much more complex.
Right. But then, and I'm really drilling this one now, I realize. But then if you're finding those 5 people in the enterprise who you need to win over, that's like a very human metric, which would be different than to I'm making these campaigns which have led to this many clicks on the website, and then you start to click through, or that page, they seem to stop on that page for some reason. That would be a different set of analysis.
Yeah, but remember, at least in a lot of the a lot of the enterprises, the half-life of a person in that job is short. And you spend the 18 months to get to the yes, and then that key person moves, and then you have 15 people, then the probability that 3 people have moved out of the way is better than 100%. So then you have to start over with them. So keeping track of the people specifically is important.
That's very interesting. We found something. I was at a conference a couple of weeks ago for Swedbank, the big bank, and they actually say one of the biggest problems that they have with online sales is that they've got this 2-factor authentication. They've got strong authentication with a PIN calculator or a card or something, SMS replies, and that was actually dropping out 30%. So it was a great example of nothing within the control of what the company did, but 30% of their orders were dropping out because it was too hard to use that authentication, and it's something completely beyond your own control. Jamie, with your speech is really powerful about I'm going to go sell. I'm going to go sell, and I don't have this thing yet, and that's really balls on the table stuff, right? To go out there.
If you think about sales as a discovery process instead of I'm going to give you a promise that I can't fulfill, those are really 2 different worlds.
Yeah, all right. Okay,
so in the beginning, I don't know anything about you. I want to know what your problems are. I want to have the problems and find out what solutions you recognize as solutions. Now we can start talking about what's possible. And then finding something that I can sell to them and make a solution offer is a much different question than I'm going to pick this random thing and then I'm going to force you to buy it.
Right. Because that's what we're all scared of with classic sales. Pushy. The guys that stand in the shopping mall, come on, buy. It's a different sort of sales.
But I would argue that and say that there's different sales methods and processes for different types of sales. So we're talking about enterprise sales.
Okay.
But I would say that the best salesperson that I've ever met in my whole entire life was when I was in India, walking along the roadside, and I was sold to boom, from stall to stall to stall to stall to stall.
Okay.
And I would say they were the best salespeople because how difficult is it to grab somebody that you've never met in your life, tell them about your product, and try and convince them that they're worth your time and conversation and purchase within 5-10 seconds
That's
attention.
hard, yeah.
So when we talk about an elevator pitch for investors and all of this type of stuff, sales is very much like that as well.
Yeah.
So I get sold to quite a lot from people looking for finance and people that are looking to raise money. And it's always, look, if you can't sell to me within the first couple of seconds or the first couple of minutes of meeting you, this meeting's going downhill. Because sales, it's a discovery process, but at the same time, you've got to set somebody's imagination going. You've got to get somebody excited about what it is that you're presenting to them.
Sure.
So the best salesperson I've ever met has been in India, walking along the roadside, and I've met guys that have sold tens of hundreds of $1 million deals to enterprise that takes 3-4 years to close. But I would still put my money on the guy on the roadside in India against that guy in enterprise sales.
He's a real hustler. I mean, he's got the hustle. He knows how to get out there and do it. He knows that.
And as an entrepreneur, you have to have that because when you're going through a startup, you're the finance person, the sales person, the marketing person, the person that has to deal with all of that, as well as sell. So it's a process, but we have to be a hustler. And in an entrepreneurial environment, the best entrepreneurs I've ever met aren't the academics. They aren't the ones with all the degrees or have been through all of this excess training. It's the hunger and it's the passion inside of them. So I'm going to sell this bloody product and I'm going to make this work and make this business work.
Okay. Do you think it's important to really hone that elevator pitch, to really work that down, like to practice, and that's what the guy on the street in India has done. He's getting that 150 times a day or more. I have no idea that he has to practice that.
Yeah.
There's one thing that when I'm helping people to become to work on their stand-up comedy, I have a little technique that I use, and we get them to write out. They say, "Okay, I've got some jokes, cool." So they write out the script. Then what I say is highlight everywhere there's a punchline, everywhere you're supposed to get a laugh. So you highlight that on your sheet of paper, and you see there the laughs. That's all you want. The rest of the words are just to get you to that punchline. And you have to reduce everything else to the smallest amount possible to get to the next joke. And what I think there's a lesson in here is about working on that elevator pitch, that you need to say, where is my key message in my script? And then work on reducing the rest of it to get to those key messages ASAP. Have you done previously work on script writing and how, or did you just find you naturally came to it?
Yeah, so I remember I did my first ever, I was invited to do a talk, and it was back at my old secondary school. And it was an assembly, it was 15 minutes long, and it was probably the worst 15 minutes of my life. And interestingly, now I've done 300, maybe 400 events in about 27 countries over the last 5-6 years. And I've had no formal training, no person sit down and actually say, this is how you do it.
Yeah.
It's been very much fail, learn. And I think that's what entrepreneurs go through naturally as a process. So sales is very much like that. When you're in the room with the people, you can judge how that situation is going and just continuously keep improving it. So it's all about feedback.
All right. Ravi, let's talk about failure a little bit. And we speak a lot that have freedom to fail, guys. It's okay. My first 1 million startups all failed, and look where I'm at now. We hear this stuff a lot, right? It's a rhetoric that goes on in our industry. But that's a separate thing to actually being in the middle of your first startup and realizing this thing's gonna tank and having to deal with that emotional stress and then getting through that. Do you have some experiences going from that?
Yeah, well, a couple of things. I don't think failure is intrinsically, I think failure sometimes is glorified. Like,
yes.
Oh, you just need to fumble your way to victory. I'm just fumbling to victory. Eventually, if I fumble enough, I'll get victory. And it's not about failing, it's about learning and making sure that you're learning as you're going through it. And the more important thing is that the path of entrepreneurship, or of any of these exercises that we're talking about here, can be a very emotionally and physically and psychologically draining one. And so it is important, I think, just during the process, both in failure and in success. Even success is stressful, because suddenly when you have success, it begets all these other responsibilities that you have to follow through on. So it's important at some level to be detached from the process. And that's even when you're going into like your 100th sales call, whether that goes well or bad, if you're too attached to the outcome, it's a very volatile and stressful life. If you can stay detached, either by being grounded with your family or your friends, or other ways where you can have these communities that can pace yourself, and this is also why it's great to have a co-founder, because the co-founder will countervail you in good times. When you're bad, they might be good. When they're bad, when they're bad, you might be good. All those things are incredibly important. I'm rambling a bit. So I think failure is good if you're learning, but the best thing is success. So I would say, succeed, because it's a little bit like the Anna Karenina quote: "All happy families are the same. All unhappy families are different in different ways."
Right.
You can go through life and have a bunch of failure experiences, but to really succeed, you need to get the sacred elements right. Everything people have been talking about today: selling first before product, doing customer discovery, identifying must-have pain points, growing at a certain clip, and being religious about. So to get those sacred things really, really right. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Remember that failure is misconstrued. If I'm running experiments and the experiment fails, then that's a no.
Yeah, okay.
No is a good answer to an experiment. Maybe and sort of are bad answers, and that's a failure. But if I run the experiment and it tells me, no, you are not a customer, hallelujah, let's go on and do something else. So lots of small bets that I can afford to spend the money on is a good way to fail.
Okay. The topic of this talk was how to earn if there's nothing to burn. And I think the implication that we all took was time. Well, what are we burning? Time, resources. But I think there's something in that what else are we burning? Our own mental sanity. And John, do you have some, when you're coaching and you're working with startups, looking at the mental health of the founders, and do you have some tips or some experiences, stories around making sure people stay healthy, because that's what we need of a strong founder?
Yeah, I think the real, on the list of 20 top things that cause companies to fail, they really didn't indicate the number one cause. Number one cause of why companies fail is between the ears of the entrepreneur.
Yeah.
We commit internal suicide and destroy the whole process we're running through because we have these stories going on in our head that get in the way of us succeeding. So I think doing a startup is one of the longest, most expensive self-help programs that there is in the world. But by the time you get done with that, the introspective entrepreneur that spends a little bit of time understanding how he's standing in his own way, everything goes forward in a good way, right? And if you see people that are going off the rails, it's often because they don't have co-founders that are supportive.
Okay.
I would say that
is that some of the things you try to address when you see that?
Oh, absolutely, because if you don't manage your internal noise, then you're going to destroy your company very quickly. For me, the thing that allowed me to get through all of my little crises, and in startups, you should be prepared for things to get weird because they will get weird, is to have a personal mentor, a personal confidant who's not your spouse, who's not your children, who's not your business partner, who's not your employee, who you can say anything to, and they will hold it and not tell anybody, but they'll let you talk, right? Sure. So you can work out some of that, whatever the weirdness is in your head.
Yep.
If you don't have a place to do that, it's very hard to get through some of the craziness of startup.
Did you have someone like that when you were doing that first selling?
Yeah, so, and just on that point, while it's in my head, I've always thought there is a market and a business for like an entrepreneur helpline. So someone that you can just call up and rant and moan and complain and talk about how bad your day has gone.
Yeah, better for the British, right?
Yeah, kind of like, I don't mind listening to that. But I've always thought there should be an entrepreneur helpline that you can just call up and get all of this stuff out of the way, because having someone to talk to is massive. And we go back to the question, and at 17, when I started my printing business, I didn't have a clue how to do printing, didn't have a clue how to do a business. I failed at school. I failed maths, I failed English. So naturally, I've always been a school of the thought, if you want to find out how to do something, find somebody that is doing it and ask them two things. Can I buy you a coffee? And can you tell me how you did it? And that's all I've ever done ever since. And I've managed to meet some really cool people around the world just by offering to buy them a coffee, because nobody ever turns down a free coffee or free lunch. That's my biggest tip on how you go and get a mentor or advice. Nobody turns down a free lunch.
Okay. Lovely. I thought maybe I'm going to try something real crazy. Let's try and get a couple questions, and I'm going to jump down and bring you the microphone, because I can do that. Hands up, does anyone have any questions for anyone here? I've sprung it on you, Estonian people. See, I'm clever.
True entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
No risk, no reward.
No risk, no
You have
reward.
Oops,
sorry, there we are.
There we go.
Hi. Hi, John and Matthew. The question I have is you always say that finding a no is a good answer, then you can move on. What my experience is that most of your answers are always in between. So my question is, how do you figure out if it's a no or a yes, or when you should give up, or how long to proceed, especially in B2B sales? I think it's always going to be something, yeah, we're going to look at it and we're going to think about it and let's talk about it in a month or so. So how to figure it out?
Yeah, so the fundamental thing is that people talk to customers. So let's ask the first question. What's a customer? Customer is somebody who pays you. So the only way you know that you're talking to a customer is that they've paid you. The only way you get someone to pay you is that you make them an offer. And so you need to be able to say to them something very specific where the answer is, yes, here's my money, or no, I didn't give you the money. And so if you have some kind of commitment where you make an offer of some kind, can I have coffee? The answer is yes, I had coffee, or I didn't have coffee. That's a small commitment. It moves me forward. Can I call you again? Can we engage in this next process? So step by step, walking through from attention to interest to commitment on the product as a collection of offers that are specific. Yes, they took the step, or no, they didn't. If I'm getting a very healthy 10% conversion rate in my conversation, then I have to talk to 100 people to get 10 people into the funnel to get, of those 10 people, one person to commit. So I'm going to talk to 100 people and I'm going to get 90 no's, and then I'm going to get 9 more no's, and then I get one customer. So if I'm not going out and taking the no's, then I'm having problems. So you talk to an engineer, have you talked to customers? And they say, yeah, I talked to lots of customers. How many did you talk to? 3. 3, the answer is no. I got 100% no. So I have talked to hundreds of people. Turns out in a weekend you can talk to 300-500 customer contacts if you make clear offers.
That whole process really sounds like trying to impress a woman. You've got to make contact. You've got to do 90 rejections until you get 5 applications. And then you got to ask questions that get you to your goal. It's excellent. It's the same process. I like it. Anyone else? Yes, sir?
Hi. My question would be directed more to B2B sales and actually looking at from the other side. So what motivates big companies to work together with startups or trusting startups? It will go to Ravi.
So you would be so surprised at how fun and stimulating it is for big executives to work with startups. So to Lewis's question before about how do you empower that champion, you don't realize the power you have as a startup to big corporations. One, many people just love the stimulation of working with new technologies, which they don't get exposed to inside of a big corporation, a big elephant that tends to move slowly. The second thing is the speed that you can iterate, for me, always impresses the Fortune 500 execs. So when the reason why Fortune 500 execs come to Alchemist and our accelerator is because they can have a feedback session with the founder or an entrepreneur, and within 2 days, that founder can turn around and give them an iteration on the sketch or the product that would normally take like 6 months for them to do if they were using one of their systems integrators or consultants or channel partners. So the speed and the stimulation of something new is interesting. And also, you hold the promise usually of innovation for that big corporation. So if you can actually bring innovation into that corporation by saving them money or building out a new product line, you can actually make that person a champion internally within that corporation. So there is a lot of value that you have as a startup that you don't even understand that the big corporates would love to get, that is very difficult for them to get access to elsewhere.
Yeah, I think like the main reason why I would like to point this out is that culturally Finland and Estonia is quite similar, but whereas in Finland there are most companies, big companies, are really eager to work together with startups.
Yeah.
In Estonia there's probably like one, I mean Telia is really supporting now. They're buying off small companies to get new tech into their system, which is cool.
You might take a look at the ones that are the big companies out in the hall, because they at least think that they're doing something innovative.
Okay, we've got time for one more question.
And I would just say that don't focus on the fact that you're a startup, focus on the problem you're going to solve for the big companies.
Right.
And if it's a big enough problem, they won't care that you're a startup.
Sure. All right, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Hello, Jose Vasquez. I have a question for you, Jamie. How do you create a culture within your company when you first started up where your employees have a shared vision that you want for your company? That group dynamics, team dynamics seems to be pretty complicated in the beginning, so I'm interested in your thoughts to that.
It's a great question, and it's an interesting one because the height of the printing business, we employed about 18 people, and I always remember hiring the very first person and putting the job spec together and all that sort of stuff. And I always remember somebody coming to the interview, and I was in jeans and a t-shirt, I don't do suits, and this person was about kind of middle-aged, far more experienced than me. They were talking about things that I didn't even know, but I just knew that they had it. And the way that I incentivized that person was not treating them like an employee. And so we hear a lot from big corporates, large startups now about employee engagement, but what does that actually mean? So aligning somebody to that vision, and I always said, and I had it clear on our office wall, of I want to get this business to a point where we are printing for some of the largest corporates in the UK. And we can do that because we're quicker than some of the bigger ones. So first answer to your question, have a big vision that everybody actually works towards and make sure that they see that vision. So everyone talks about a mission statement, that's almost the same thing, but have it clear so that everybody that joins your business knows that that's what their common goal and to work towards. Now as an organization, I think what kind of excites some of our people is the fact of being involved in something that's far bigger than they are. And I think that's a really exciting thing because entrepreneurs are naturally like that. They will gravitate towards filling a gap or filling a void. But for somebody that has that employee mentality, you have to change that a little bit and get them really excited about, look, this is not just a day job. You don't just turn up at 8:59 and leave at 5:01. If you really want to be successful in this organization, we are solving something, and it's quite cliche, but a lot of Silicon Valley startups are all about changing the world now. And I don't think that's an accident. Yes, they are changing the world, but they're inspiring their people, their team, their leadership organization, their first early adopters of their clients. They're inspiring people to buy into them and back them. So when you're growing a business, talent is probably the scariest thing to go through and the most important thing, because if you get that wrong, it can be costly. So have a vision, make sure everybody works towards it, look for great people, and employ people that are far smarter than you are. That's been my lesson over the last couple of years.
Good, cool. Unfortunately, we have to move on right now. We have to end it. Gentlemen, thank you very much. I want to thank you for speaking today. We've got a little gift bag for you all there. Thank you. There you are.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, guys. So that's the end of this session. Thank you all for being here. Thanks very much. We're going to start back here at 12 o'clock again. And one more round of applause for these guys. Thank you to Jamie. Thank you to John. Thank you to Ravi. See you later. See you at 12.